I've often said that there are only a handful of days that will completely change the direction of your life. For me, one of those days came when I was just 25 years old, struggling to make ends meet on a meager salary that barely covered my expenses. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, bills spread out before me, wondering how a grown man could work so hard and have so little to show for it. That was when my mentor, Earl Schoaf, said something that changed everything. Jim, for things to change, you have to change. For things to get better, you have to get better. Such a simple idea, but it struck me with the force of revelation. Now I travel the world sharing what I've learned, but I want you to understand something crucial. The principles that transformed my life weren't complicated or mysterious. They were simple, timeless truths that anyone could apply if they had the discipline to do so. You see, success isn't about knowing what to do. Most of us already know. The challenge lies in doing what we know. That's why I tell my audiences that we must become students of our own lives, carefully examining what works, what doesn't, and making the necessary adjustments. Not next month, not next week, but today. The exceptional life isn't handed to us. It's crafted day by day, choice by choice. I remember when I first started keeping a journal, writing down my thoughts, plans, and observations. Earl had suggested it, but I couldn't see the value at first. Why record ordinary days, I thought. But he insisted, Jim, the greatest value in life comes from the mundane, from the small disciplines practiced daily that compound over time. He was right. That journal became a map of my transformation, showing me patterns I couldn't otherwise see. And that's what this journey is about, uncovering the patterns, the disciplines, and the philosophies that separate an ordinary existence from an extraordinary life. Let me tell you why everything starts with philosophy. Your personal philosophy is the set of beliefs that determine how you interpret the world around you. It's not just abstract thinking. It's the foundation upon which every decision you make rests. I've watched thousands of people struggle financially, relationally, physically, and in virtually every other area simply because they never took time to develop a sound philosophy. They drift through life, letting circumstances dictate their responses rather than guided by well-thought-out principles. And here's what's fascinating. Two people can experience the exact same event and react in completely opposite ways based solely on their underlying philosophy. I remember counseling two different men who had both experienced business failures. One was bitter, resentful, convinced the world had treated him unfairly. The other was reflective, taking responsibility, eager to learn from mistakes and try again. Same circumstance, wildly different responses, and consequently, wildly different futures ahead of them. This is why I say with absolute conviction that philosophy is not a luxury for academics. It's a necessity for everyone who seeks an exceptional life. Your philosophy will either lead you to success or hold you in failure. There is no neutral position. Now, developing a sound philosophy doesn't happen overnight. It requires exposure to new ideas, thoughtful reflection, and the courage to question assumptions you've carried for years. I often tell the story of how I began collecting quotes and ideas on small note cards, reviewing them regularly until they became part of my thinking. I still have hundreds of these cards, some yellowed with age, filled with wisdom that shaped my philosophy. Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. Don't wish for fewer problems. Wish for more skills. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. These weren't just catchy phrases to me. They became the bedrock of my approach to life. And that's the invitation I extend to you. Become a serious student of philosophy, not to impress others with your knowledge, but to transform your life from the inside out. The most important investment you will ever make isn't in stocks, real estate, or precious metals. It's in yourself. I learned this lesson the hard way. For years, I focused exclusively on making money, thinking that financial success would solve all my problems. But no matter how hard I worked, something was missing. It wasn't until Mr. Schoaf said to me, Jim, Work harder on yourself than you do on your job, that I began to understand. Your income rarely exceeds your personal development. If you want your circumstances to change, you must change first. This isn't positive thinking, it's a law as reliable as gravity. Personal development isn't something you do once and then move on. It's a lifelong commitment. I've been reading, studying, attending seminars, and seeking wisdom for over 5 decades now, and I still consider myself a student. The moment you stop growing is the moment you begin dying. I remember meeting a man in his 50s who proudly told me he had 20 years of experience in his field. After speaking with him for 30 minutes, I realized he didn't have 20 years of experience. He had 1 year of experience repeated 20 times. He had stopped learning, stopped growing, stopped challenging himself years ago. Don't let that happen to you. Make a commitment today to invest at least 30 minutes every day in reading, listening to educational content, or engaging with ideas that stretch your thinking. What astonishes me is how small this investment really is, and yet how rare it is for people to make it. 30 minutes a day equals 182 hours a year, the equivalent of 4 full work weeks dedicated to your personal growth. Imagine what would happen if you invested that much focused time in developing your mind, your skills, your character. I've watched people transform their income, their relationships, their health, and their sense of fulfillment through this simple discipline. The books you don't read won't help you. The seminars you don't attend can't change you. The ideas you don't expose yourself to won't inspire you. Personal development isn't optional for the exceptional life. It's the very foundation upon which that life is built. Time is the great equalizer. The President of the United States, the janitor at the local school, the billionaire entrepreneur, and the struggling artist all have exactly the same amount. 24 hours each day, no more, no less. What separates them isn't the time they have, but how they choose to invest it. I use that word deliberately. Invest, not spend. You see, when you spend something, it's gone forever. But when you invest, you expect a return. The exceptional life comes to those who view every hour as an investment opportunity, not an expenditure. I learned about time mastery early in my career when Mr. Schoaf asked me a question that stopped me in my tracks. Jim, how many books do you read each month? Embarrassed, I admitted that I didn't really read books at all. He didn't criticize me. He simply said, if you want your life to change, you've got to change your inputs. He suggested I start with just 10 pages a day. Can you do that, Jim? He asked. It seemed manageable, so I agreed. 10 pages a day isn't much, about 15 minutes of reading. But do you know what happens when you read 10 pages a day? In a month, you've read 300 pages, equivalent to an entire book. In a year, that's 12 books. In a decade, it's 120 books. That simple 15-minute daily discipline, maintained over time, completely transformed my understanding of the world. This is the secret of time mastery that most people never grasp. Greatness doesn't come from singular, heroic actions, but from small disciplines repeated daily. I call this the slight edge principle. The actions themselves are easy to do, but they're also easy not to do. Anyone can read 10 pages, write in a journal for 15 minutes, make 2 business calls, spend 30 minutes on focused planning, or save a small portion of their income. These actions, in isolation, don't produce noticeable results, but accumulated over time, they create extraordinary outcomes. The tragedy is that because we don't see immediate results, most people abandon these disciplines before the compounding effect kicks in. Remember this truth. What you do every day matters more than what you do once in a while. Time mastery isn't about radical changes. It's about consistent, small investments in the right places over the long term. Let me share something I wish someone had taught me when I was starting out. Your philosophy about money will determine your financial destiny far more than how much you earn. I've seen people making millions who live paycheck to paycheck, and I've met individuals with modest incomes who achieved financial security and even wealth. The difference wasn't in their paychecks, but in their understanding of what I call the economics of life, the fundamental principles that govern financial success regardless of external circumstances. The first principle is embarrassingly simple, yet violated by most Americans. Spend less than you earn. No financial strategy, no investment approach, no business venture can overcome the disaster of consistently spending more than you make. I remember counseling a young couple who came to me desperate for financial advice. They earned over $100,000 between them, an impressive sum, yet couldn't figure out why they were drowning in debt. When we analyzed their spending, the answer became obvious. Despite their substantial income, they spent an average of $120,000 annually. No mathematical magic can make that equation work over time. Financial independence begins with the discipline of living on less than you make, not temporarily as part of some crash budget, but as a fundamental life philosophy. The second principle follows naturally from the first. It's not what you make that matters, but what you keep. I often ask my audiences, if you earned $100,000 this year, how much did you keep? Most people look confused, as if I've asked them to solve a complex equation. But this is the essence of financial literacy, understanding that income is merely a starting point. What matters is how much of that income you transform into assets that work for you. I teach what I call the 70-30 rule. Learn to live on 70% of your income, give 10% to charity, pay 10% in taxes through wise planning, and invest 10% in assets that appreciate or generate income. Follow this formula consistently, and financial independence becomes not just possible but inevitable. The exceptional life requires exceptional thinking about economics, starting with these fundamental truths. Some people ask me why I'm so passionate about goal setting. Let me tell you why. Goals are the mechanism by which dreams transform into reality. Without goals, aspirations remain in the realm of fantasy, pleasant to think about, but disconnected from daily life. With clear written goals, however, something remarkable happens. Your mind begins to organize your actions, your choices, and even your perceptions around the achievement of those objectives. I often say that once you set a goal, you've started a process that heaven and earth conspire to help you complete. But only if you've had the discipline to clarify exactly what you want. The most common mistake I see people make with goals is treating them casually, mentioning them in passing, but never giving them the serious consideration they deserve. Here's what I recommend. Take a full weekend, alone if possible, to think deeply about what you want in each area of your life. Don't rush this process. Consider your health, relationships, career, finances, spiritual development, contribution to others, and personal fulfillment. Write specific goals for each area, and for each goal, ask yourself, why is this important to me? The answer to that question provides the emotional fuel that will keep you going when obstacles inevitably arise. I remember spending 3 full days at a mountain cabin defining my goals when I was 30. Those 72 hours of focused thinking set the trajectory for decades of achievement that followed. But setting goals is just the beginning. You must review them regularly, daily if possible, and create specific plans for their achievement. Break larger goals into smaller milestones. Identify the skills you'll need to develop, the knowledge you must acquire, the relationships you should cultivate. Most importantly, determine the daily disciplines required to move steadily toward your objectives. A goal without a plan is merely a wish. A goal without consistent action remains forever on paper, never manifesting in reality. I've kept every goal list I've written since my 30s, and it's remarkable to see how many have been achieved. Not because I'm special, but because I followed this systematic approach. The exceptional life doesn't happen by accident. It's the natural result of exceptional clarity about what you want and exceptional discipline in moving toward it day by day. If there's one area where most people underinvest, it's in the cultivation of meaningful relationships. We're so busy pursuing financial and career goals that we neglect the connections that give life its richness and depth. I learned this lesson painfully in my early years of building my business. I was working 16-hour days, convinced that success would bring happiness. When my first marriage failed, I was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Achievement without strong relationships creates wealth without fulfillment. Since then, I've made the study and practice of relationship building as serious a pursuit as my business endeavors. What I've discovered is that relationships, like financial assets, must be approached with intention and strategy. This doesn't mean manipulating people or seeing them as means to an end. Rather, it means recognizing that meaningful connections don't usually happen by accident. They're the result of deliberate investment. I follow what I call the five-person principle. You will become the average of the five people you spend the most time with. Their habits, attitudes, income levels, and aspirations will, over time, become yours. This isn't mystical. It's simply the power of environment and association. So I ask my audiences, who are your five? Are they pulling you up or dragging you down? Do they expand your thinking or limit your potential? The exceptional life is built on exceptional relationships, and these relationships require care and feeding. Make it a discipline to express appreciation regularly. Learn to ask thoughtful questions and listen, truly listen, to the answers. Become genuinely interested in others' success, not just your own. I remember being at a networking event early in my career where everyone was trying to impress each other with their accomplishments. Mr. Schaff pulled me aside and said, "Jim, you'll make more progress by being interested than by trying to be interesting." That single piece of advice transformed my approach to relationships. I began focusing on how I could add value to others rather than what I could extract from them. The result? Deeper connections, more opportunities, and the kind of support network that sustains you through life's inevitable challenges. Remember, wealth without relationships is poverty disguised as prosperity. Few skills will impact your success more profoundly than your ability to communicate effectively. I'm not just talking about public speaking, though that's certainly valuable. I'm referring to the broader capacity to express ideas clearly, listen perceptively, and connect authentically with others through words. Early in my career, I was terrified of public speaking. My knees would shake, my voice would quaver, and my mind would go blank at the mere thought of addressing a group. But I recognized that this limitation would severely restrict my ability to influence others and share the ideas I was so passionate about. So I made a commitment to mastery that changed everything. I joined Toastmasters and forced myself to speak weekly. I recorded my presentations and critiqued them mercilessly. I studied great communicators, noting their techniques, their timing, their use of stories and metaphors. Was it uncomfortable? Absolutely. There were nights I couldn't sleep dreading the next day's speech. But I understood something fundamental. Growth and comfort cannot coexist. You must choose one or the other, and I chose growth. After hundreds of speeches, many of them painfully awkward, something shifted. The fear didn't disappear entirely, but it transformed from a paralyzing force into manageable energy that actually enhanced my delivery. What I learned through this process extends far beyond formal presentations. Effective communication in all its forms follows the same principles. Clarity of thought precedes clarity of expression. Emotional connection matters more than technical perfection, and authenticity trumps polish every time. I remember giving what I thought was a brilliant speech filled with impressive vocabulary and complex concepts. Afterward, a gentleman approached me and said kindly but firmly, "Mr. Rohn, I couldn't follow a word you said." That humbling feedback taught me that communication isn't about impressing people. It's about connecting with them. Since then, I've followed a simple rule. If you can't explain an idea to a 12-year-old, you don't understand it well enough yourself. The exceptional life requires exceptional communication, the ability to convey your vision, influence others, resolve conflicts, and express the unique perspective that only you can offer to the world. There comes a point in every successful person's journey when accumulation alone no longer satisfies. You've achieved financial stability, perhaps even wealth. You've developed valuable skills and knowledge. You've built a network of meaningful relationships. And yet something feels incomplete. That's when you discover what I believe is the highest purpose of success: to be in a position to contribute significantly to others. This isn't just about charity, though that's important. It's about leveraging everything you've become and acquired to make a meaningful difference in causes larger than yourself. I discovered this truth in my 40s. I had achieved financial independence and was enjoying the benefits of success, but I felt strangely restless. It was during a conversation with my mentor that I gained clarity. "Jim," he said, "you've mastered taking. Now you need to master giving." Those words struck deep. I realized I'd been measuring success primarily by what flowed to me rather than through me. That conversation initiated a fundamental shift in my thinking. I began asking different questions. Not just, what can I earn, but what can I contribute? Not just, what can I achieve, but what can I make possible for others? This wasn't about abandoning ambition, but about elevating it to a higher purpose. The discipline of contribution requires the same intentionality as any other area of mastery. It means clarifying your unique abilities and how they can best serve others. It means allocating resources, time, money, knowledge, connections, with strategic thoughtfulness, just as you wouldn't invest financially without considering the return. Don't invest your contributive efforts without considering their impact. I allocate a specific percentage of my income, my time, and my creative energy to causes that align with my values. I mentor emerging leaders intentionally, not casually. I support organizations that leverage my contribution rather than merely consuming it. And here's what I've discovered. Contribution doesn't diminish success. It amplifies it. When you make service a discipline rather than an afterthought, you don't have less, you experience more. The exceptional life is ultimately measured not by what you acquire, but by what you give away with purpose and intention. As we conclude our time together, I want to share perhaps the most important principle of exceptional living. It's never finished. There is no arrival, no final destination where you can plant your flag and declare, "I've made it." The exceptional life is not a static achievement, but a dynamic journey of continuous growth and refinement. I'm in my 80s now, having taught these principles for more than 5 decades, and I still begin each day with the same question: how can I become better today than I was yesterday? This isn't about perfectionism or dissatisfaction with the present. It's about embracing the exhilarating truth that our potential for development never ends. I often tell the story of meeting a famous concert pianist after a magnificent performance. I complimented his playing, and he thanked me graciously. Then he said something I'll never forget. "I'm still practicing 4 hours daily." Surprised, I asked why someone at his level of mastery would need such rigorous practice. His answer was profound. "That's how I got to this level, and that's how I stay here." You see, he understood that exceptional performance isn't achieved and then maintained automatically. It requires ongoing commitment to the fundamentals, regardless of how advanced you become. This principle applies universally. The exceptional marriage isn't built once and then left on autopilot. The exceptional career doesn't sustain itself without continuous reinvention. The exceptional life in any dimension requires persistent attention and refinement. So I leave you with this challenge. Resist the seduction of arrival. When you achieve a goal, celebrate briefly, then set a new one. When you master a skill, teach it to others, then pursue new capabilities. When you reach a level of success in any area, use it as a foundation for the next phase of growth rather than a conclusion. I've known too many people who achieved remarkable success only to stagnate because they stopped applying the very principles that got them there. Don't let that happen to you. Maintain your curiosity. Preserve your humility. Keep your hunger for improvement alive. The secret of exceptional living isn't found in reaching a particular destination. It's discovered in the joy of perpetual growth, in becoming more tomorrow than you are today. That journey has no end, and therein lies its greatest reward.